Well, welcome to a wet Indianapolis Motor Speedway at the end of the first day of a series-sanctioned test, which contained 4 different cars on 2 different programs. We had Alexander Rossi and Takuma Sato here testing new components on the race cars, namely new brakes and a new damper program, which potentially will be a spec part at some point in the future. We'll definitely have a discussion about that and the merits of, or maybe demerits about that. We also had Pato Award and Alex Palou here testing tires. That program is already over. This was scheduled to be a 2-day test. Firestone's happy with whatever data that they generated from those 2 drivers. Those 2 drivers and cars are done for the rest of the time. The plan is, despite the fact that it rained today, for the 2 cars that are testing components, that being Takuma Sato and Alexander Rossi, to return to the Speedway tomorrow to finish up those testing programs. But this isn't really a competitive test. This is more of a test to test new things for next year. But it's nice that they had us out here, because we not only got to speak to the drivers participating in this test, and we got some interesting things out of them, but we also got to speak to IndyCar President Doug Boles. Now, you'll be able to see the entire interview already uploaded on my channel, so if you want to check that out, go ahead and do so. And while you're down there, hit the like button, subscribe, and comment. It helps me out. It's all free to do. Doug had a lot of interesting things to say and talk about state of the sport-wise, but specifically for this test, there's new pavement in Turn 2, there's new brakes, there's new dampers, and this is what Doug had to say about all of those things.
So the bump in 2, obviously, it started several years ago. Actually, in 2020, I believe, we were having some track issues, and we were out at night actually fixing the track, and we really noticed the bump with some headlights that were shining. You could actually see a shadow where that bump was beginning to develop. So we've been watching it for 5 or 6 years now. This year leading into May, the bump was actually higher than it was in 2024. We measure the track all the way around so we can see where things are every year. So we had to roll it to get it back to 2024 levels. We felt good about that. It was fine through the month of May. But during the summer, the heat in Indiana this summer has really allowed those bricks to really push further into the surface. And NASCAR, the drivers, Kyle Larson was the first to notice it in NASCAR, a couple of other places that we were also able to solve inside Turn 2. And our concern was, if we didn't fix it this fall, that if it continued to do what it looks like it's done over the last, call it 24 months, we could end up in a situation where we couldn't fix that bump in time to run the Indianapolis 500, so they'd have to manage that bump throughout the race. So we felt the best thing to do was let's just excavate the asphalt, get down in there, understand what's going on with the bricks, get those bricks out that were a problem, resurface it, get out here in this test to make sure it's good to go. So a little bit nervous today getting here, to be real honest with you, hoping that everything was fine. It's too important to not have it go really well. I talked to Pato first. Pato said no issues at all. He thinks it's great. And then talking to Palou said the same thing. So they both said it's really ready to go racing. No grip level difference. It's really on the driver exit apex, if you will, as you're tracking out of Turn 2, so it's nice that it's there. The one thing that Alex did say he felt like it would be helpful, that bump seemed to get progressively worse, sort of offline, maybe towards one line off of the wall as you came out the exit, and that was where you felt it. He said so he felt like from a safety standpoint, trying to run 2x2, coming through 2, that it's going to be better. So I feel pretty good about where we are.
What are some of those new parts that you're testing on the cars today?
So we're working on some brake situations, brake fixes, if you will. We did see some incidents in May, so we're trying to figure out, is there a way that we can eliminate some of those problems with brakes as drivers come in and go from 240 miles an hour to stopping in the pit box. So we're working on some things there. Also looking at some shocks. We've talked for a long time about, should we go to a spec shock, should we not go to a spec shock? So we're actually testing some different shock options. Not that we're making that decision, but you can't make a decision if you don't have the data. So we're trying to get some of the data there. So those will be future decisions that we'll make. Some of them could be next year, the brakes, for example, and shocks would likely be something further in the future.
And specifically when we're looking at the racing next year, and you heard Doug talk about the bricks coming up and causing bumps in Turn 2, those bumps are really on the exit of the corner. But we got some interesting answers from drivers like Alexander Rossi and Alex Palou about what that may or may not do to the racing when we return here in May.
So my concern of it was that the bump on the entry of 2 was going to get taken away, which is what makes Turn 2 so challenging. And the repave is actually the exit of Turn 2, so it has nothing to do with that, which means the corner's the same, which is great.
Honestly speaking, I don't think it's going to change a lot, because where the new surface and patches were almost exit of turn 2 to almost going to the straight. So there is a little bit bigger bumps where the NASCAR boys, I think they are getting much closer on the walls. They felt much severe than us. So from what I can see, still turn 2 is still very challenging, particularly small dip and undulating on the apex part hasn't been touched. So there is still characteristic is exactly the same. But on the exit, the small bumps, it certainly help for from safety's point of view. I think it was definitely improvement.
For sure, I don't know how much. Don't want to promise you that it's going to be crazy overtaking into turn 3 now, because there's a bump in entry of turn 2, which is still when the steering wheel is straight, but there's a bump there. There's a dip that we all feel. But still, I think that exit, it's going to help everybody. It's not going to help the guys running in the back or at the front. It's going to help everybody. So I think it's going to be better for overtaking.
And you also heard from Takuma Sato, who was here testing, and that obviously has created a lot of question marks about Takuma Sato and whether or not he will return to the Indianapolis 500 next year. I would say most likely, and here's his answers when questioned about whether he would come back and how long does Takuma Sato want to keep racing at the Indianapolis 500.
I don't know. I mean, I can't tell. But as long as I feel confident, I feel physically, mentally still prepared to challenge for this biggest event, I'd like to continue. Whether that will be only a few years or multiple years, I don't know. But certainly working on the progress for the next year. But I'd like to say more, but I cannot say anymore.
Always great to hear from a two-time champion of the Indianapolis 500. The driver, of course, that's going to be trying to double up and win his second Indianapolis 500 when we come back here in May next year is Alex Palou. And Alex was driving a totally matte black car today. And I needed to ask him, is that the Indy 500 winning chassis?
The car?
No.
Okay.
No.
It's a new car?
No, it's just one of a test car that we have. No. I'm not.
Is that coming back out? Yeah.
I don't know. That's honestly, I don't. I have no idea. And it's one of those things that I don't really care. Although it's the car, if there's a faster one, I'll take it. So I'm not gonna be like, oh no, I want that car. Whatever the team says, I'll drive. I'll drive. Even if it's this one, that it's probably just not very well done. If it's fast, I would just take whatever. I don't care.
So the big story, I think, coming out of this test are the dampers. Now, to explain, the shocks and springs on the cars are open for development. That is the one piece of equipment on an IndyCar since 2012 that the teams have essentially had free rein to design and create what they need to make their race car the fastest that they can. We typically call those dampers. Now, this has been a point of contention for especially small teams over the course of the years. There's tens of millions of dollars spent over the course of this chassis and engine formula on that particular area because it is the only area that is really open for development. And many teams, like the new ones like Prema or even some of the lesser funded teams like Dale Coyne, might benefit from having those parts be spec, especially in the future when you're looking to 2028 in the new chassis. The alternative part to that is that this is a top-level championship, and I think we would like to see things that are, key, I think, to a top-level championship is it's not just the competition between the drivers, it's the competition between the teams, and it's the competition between the engineers. And you need all of those elements to make something really exciting and compelling. And so the first question that needs to be answered is what the drivers think of it, because ultimately they're the ones behind the wheel. Do they think it benefits the series, or do they think it doesn't benefit the series?
Honestly, I don't know. I think at this stage it's only development. Obviously, technology is coming over the last 10 years, and the spec dumper might not have that kind of things. But the technology will probably, overcome to compensate to have a similar performance. That's what they're aiming for. So let's see. May not have exact same performance as of today, but if we can show the guidance of what it looks like on a spec dampers, which hasn't confirmed, but that's the whole idea is.
But I think that certainly there will be a difference. I mean, if you think about the years and the capital that's been put into damper programs up and down pit lane, you don't spend tens of millions of dollars over a decade to not make something better than spec, right? So I don't imagine it'll be the same or better, but the magnitude of how different it is an unknown. In terms of if we should do it or not, I think that one of the very cool things about this championship is the differentiation up and down pit lane on that side of the car. You get rid of that, and it's very much a spec championship, which obviously has some pros to it. But ultimately, if you look at how close it is up and down pit lane and qualifying, and how hundreds make a difference from transferring out of your group, I don't think competitiveness is something we're struggling with.
I mean, we obviously already have spec aero. I mean, I don't know what the vision is to make it even more spec, because then I think it takes away a little bit of what the teams can actually bring to the table, other than just changing the setup. Then it just feels like a junior formula. So I wouldn't say I don't think it's the right thing to do to make it extremely spec. I still think there should be areas where it is open to really see the development side and the fruits of it from different teams. Like we have seen, all these years in the past, where some cars are super strong in street courses, some of them road course. Like, there is a difference, but obviously a spec series should make the racing better. But we're a top tier racing series. We're not a junior formula, so I think it's a delicate line that they're flirting with right now, with how much or how spec they want to go.
And so I would tend to agree with what you heard from the drivers. And look, I'm a purist at the end of the day, and certainly IndyCar racing hasn't exactly been the model of purity from the technological development and competition standpoint, to say the least. But at the same time, the fans can't really see the dampers. They don't really care about the dampers. But what I would say is this, is that even if you don't see them, the teams are still putting in the effort, and it's what separates a good team from a bad team. It's why we talk, and will talk this coming offseason, between 26 and 27, about just how important it is for the right driver and the right team to get married at the right time. And a big part of that is development programs and what the teams can contribute to make the cars faster. That is an element that this racetrack has been designed, built, and used for. It was it was designed in 1909 as a test bed for the automotive industry. And I get it. We don't really do all that much with that anymore. 110 plus years later. But I feel like that's still an element that is key and important to IndyCar racing. These teams have such massive budgets, and I get it. Racing's expensive. It always has been. You're always going to look for areas to cut. And I also understand the point that these are not parts that necessarily get people excited about race cars. But I think from the competition standpoint, you want there to be a separation between the good teams and the bad teams, and you want teams to be able to figure things out and have an advantage if they can find it, because that is compelling television. It's compelling to watch. It's compelling to talk about. It's why you tune into people like David Land, so I can tell you what teams are good, what teams are bad, what teams are going up the field, what teams are going down the field. And if everything's the same, and if everybody's special, nobody is, right? And I'm hoping that maybe we don't go down that road. Or if we do, we open up another area of development, a different area of development that's maybe more interesting for the fans, maybe more interesting for the media, maybe something that we can talk about and visually see. That would be my solution. But thank you guys so much for watching. It's always such a privilege to cover stuff here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, particularly they're going that direction. Like I said, if you're here, well, today when I'm uploading this, Alexander Rossi and Takuma Sato will be shaking down those new dampers that they might or might not use in the future. So if you want to come out here and check that out, be my guest. I'm sure they would love to see you out here, and I'm sure you would love to see Indy cars on the oval. So thank you guys so much for watching. This has been David Land on YouTube. Subscribe for more motorsport content, and I will see you in the next video.